You can hear this wonderful presentation. We're going to hear from the Verrets. It is the A.R.T. of Evangelization, Attraction, Relationships, and Trust as the keys to renewing marriage formation. And so we have Mary Rose and Ryan Verret. They founded Witness to Love in 2012, which is now used in hundreds of parishes and 70 dioceses throughout the United States and Canada. In creating Witness to Love, they created a program, a movement, and a paradigm shift that speaks to the everyday struggles and joys of newlyweds, while giving them parish lifelines of connection that last beyond their wedding day. And isn't that what we need for our people today? To have a connection to their home parish. So we are very excited to invite them up. If I have one more piece of information to share with you, together the Verrets speak nationally on issues regarding marriage, evangelization, faith, and family. They have been interviewed by the National Catholic Register, EWTN, the Catholic World Report, Catholic News Agency, The Gus Lloyd Show, Alicia, and secular media outlets. They are also the authors of Witness to Love, How to Help the Next Generation Build Marriages That Survive and Thrive. Please give a warm welcome to Mary Rose and Ryan Verret. We just arrived back we were in California this past week.
We were at this event called the Napa Institute. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it, but if you're familiar with it, it was an opportunity and something that Mary Rose and I had heard about, but didn't really have a sense of calling to go. But we were invited to go, and we had the opportunity to share over breakfast with a large group of marriage champions from around the U.S. Sort of a message. With Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Obviously a great national marriage champion and somebody on the front line. San Francisco is a different culture than Lafayette. It's still, the truth remains the same, and we need those witnesses. But Napa was fun, a lot of good food. Weather was a little bit less humidity than here, and it was in a vineyard, which was unique. So in Vino Veritas was the theme for the day, where there's wine, there's truth. So a lot of honest conversations. And there's nothing wrong with wine, obviously, but what came from those honest conversations was some sobering details that I think it's easy for us to recognize. And one of them was this talk I went to that was sponsored by Alethea. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, Alethea. And it was what the church in the United States is going to look like in 2025. And I don't know if you're familiar with what people, the predictions. This wasn't a doom and gloom cloud. These are just some realists and investor types. And they said that in 2025, we should anticipate having 55 less priests. Percent less priests active in the United States, working, in our parishes. And our church hinges on the sacramental life of the church that Christ, the shade came from his wounded side, and the priesthood is essential and necessary. But that is a paradigm shift. Talking about paradigm shifts, to think it's 2018 if you're keeping up with your calendar. That's not too long from now. So this graying that's taking place in the church, nothing wrong with gray people. It just means that we have to be sure we're ready for what parishes need.
We also, a week before we went to California, we were in Canada. We were in Quebec. And we were meeting with what I would really call the underground church in Quebec, meaning the few families who go to church. Very few families in Quebec go to church. We were at this one house, and we were meeting a whole bunch of families from hours away, had all gotten together, and we were visiting with them, and we said, tell us about the challenges of the church in Canada. And they said that last week their 7-year-old had received her first communion, and that there hadn't been a first communicant in their parish in a while. So she had to go receive it at another parish. And when they came back to their home parish, the daughter asked her, said, "Mom, why are we the only children in church?" And we were visiting with Archbishop Prendergast after that, and we told him, we said, "Look, this is grim." And he said, yes. He said that child was prophetic. And children need to state the grim reality. Why are we the only children in church? And the U.S. is not that far behind Canada. Here in Lafayette, Louisiana is a incredible pocket of Catholicism. There are some places around the country where the church is strong, but in many places, churches are closing. Churches are consolidating. Many of your dioceses, it is really, really grim.
We were in Quebec, and one of the reasons we're working with a lot of places in the U.S. and Canada, and we get to learn from a lot of people. And a lot of y'all in this room, we're learning a lot about the way we need to engage young people. Young people today, it's obviously it's just so different. Millennials. I mean, they're not really consulting like encyclopedias. Remember encyclopedias and card catalogs and, asking you questions? I mean, I'd say all the answers are coming from the new church, which is sort of Pope Siri and Googleism. I mean, that's where, to play on words, but I mean, imagine, our little kids, like, ask Siri. Like, no, I can explain to you how to do this. We can figure this out. But the trust is in sort of instruments. The trust is not in people. The information is coming from machines. It's not coming from relationships. But we're in Quebec, and I think learning from places like that about how they're engaging in the culture, because we don't want to see what the data is showing for 2025. We want to see vibrant communities. And we know from Louisiana all the way up to the St. Lawrence River in Quebec, I mean, everyone is being formed by the same culture today. But we have something we want to share with you from our experience.
So this isn't a gloom and doom talk. We're not here to be the Grim Reapers. But we want to paint the picture of what the church is projected to be like if we don't do something different, and not just a little different. I think we can all agree that for the past 30, 40 years, we've been making small tweaks in the church. Little, let's try this, let's try that. But what we really need in the church is a reset, a totally new way of looking at things. And we can't give like the whole big, Witness to Love background talk here today. You can watch some of that on our website. It's witnesstolove.org. Many of you have been trained already and use it. So we're not going to go all the way there. But this talk is how can you practically turn this around? How can we turn this train around? Everybody, in Napa at this event, that was the focus. How do we turn this grim statistic that without an intense change, how can we turn this around? Because it's happening. And we have to say, even though, Witness Love right now is, in about 400 plus parishes, those parishes that have been doing it for more than a year and a half have seen an increase in church attendance. The average, it's about 10% of newly married couples that go to church, they were already going to church. But how do you get that number up? How do you fill the church so that the church has a future, so that there's families in church, so that kids don't say, why are we the only children in church? And we can honestly say that what we have learned with working some of the most incredible pastors in this country, that it can be turned around. It can be done. And we just wanted to share some of the core things that we've learned. And this presentation, this feedback, these stories, everything we're telling you is, I'd say, sort of live, hot, fresh, and real. These are conversations we've had. Last summer, we were in 17 states doing trainings. Just last summer, talking to priests, bishops, family life directors, couples, families, getting real feedback from all over the country. So this isn't kind of like a long, drawn-out study per se. This isn't something that we're putting together that 5 years from now we might look at. This is live, real stories from people that we're going to be talking about here.
And we were in a minivan we rented for 45 days straight with our four children under 8 years old, and if that van could talk, it was an amazing trip. But we had the opportunity to do that, and we wanted to get out there and just sort of get connected and hear where things are going and what people were saying, because there's only so much you can learn on the screens. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking with people and you're going into their homes, mm-hmm. so much can take place.
Yes. And so we've kind of talked about the current state of marriage preparation. We want to talk about some sort of trends that we're seeing across the nation. There's trends, instead of calling it marriage preparation, the trend is now calling it marriage formation. Okay? We've seen that all over the place. And the reason for that is it implies that it's ongoing. It implies that it's not just for engaged people. It includes the civilly married group. So marriage formation is the new trend. Another trend is including marriage preparation as marriage formation under evangelization. Okay, we've seen that happen in a lot of dioceses that we've worked with, where they have access to more resources and they're more connected in the church than they were when they were just over here as family life, that they're more getting those evangelization resources that are critical for the family. There is a paragraph in Familiaris Consortio that we refer to all the time, and it really is the starting point for understanding what needs to change. In the past, marriage preparation, marriage formation has been strictly about these are the things that you need to do in order to get married in the Catholic Church. These steps that we give couples presume the couples are coming to us for a sacrament. Couples are not coming to us for a sacrament. Probably around 2 to 5% are coming for a sacrament. The rest are coming for a venue. Okay? I used to say that, and I was saying it in a jaded way. I'm not saying it in a jaded, judgmental way right now. I'm telling you that's the reality. Don't presume a couple coming to you for marriage is coming to you for a sacrament. It's just a venue.
And again, part of this reset button, and just to explain that venue versus the sacrament, Mary Rose and I use this number oftentimes, sort of the two percenters, and I think you might get this. I would say Mary Rose and I are in the 2% or less category in the United States. We use NFP. We have priests who are friends. We like priests. We like deacons. We like nuns. We listen to Catholic radio. We go to church regularly. You know, it works for us. But we know at the end of the day that we cannot be a church for just the 2%ers. Mm-hmm. And we have so many 2%er books on our shelf. We have so many programs and resources and guides and binders.
Great.
And they're great. And we can love them until we fall asleep at night. But at the end of the day, there's only so much those books can do, right? And there's something that needs to happen before the book. So we were kind of, the reset was, wow, we having a good time, but where are my siblings? Why aren't they going to church? Why don't they get married in the church? You know, it's not just for us.
Mm-hmm. And that 2% he's talking about, so of couples who come to the church for marriage prep, around 2% of them are couples that everything we do is geared for them. They're ready to receive what we have to offer. The other couples are just like this. They make me care. Prove to me that what you have to say is interesting. Ryan and I have given conferences to engaged couples many times, and even when there's great feedback, and this is something really important, and I'm going to say this now, but I want you to think about it some more later. In marriage preparation, when we have these conferences, we do an evaluation at the end of the day, okay? And I want you to think about the questions we're asking these couples. Do you plan to abstain? You know, have we talked you into abstaining? Have we talked you into using natural family planning? Okay, has this increased your likelihood to get involved in the church? All of those things, those are important questions, but we are asking them at the wrong time. Okay, imagine a cohabitating or sexually active couple, you know, whatever they put on paper, doesn't matter. They're sexually active, most of them, okay? Just presume. And if you ask them after 1 day or 6 weeks or whatever, do you plan to abstain? Do you plan to use NFP? How many of those couples do you think actually do that? Okay, do you think they're equipped to do that? The couple who've been living together for 3 years, who don't go to church, who have a pornography addiction, whose all their friends are doing that, who just came to this event so that they could use the church because grandma won't pay for the wedding. Do you think what those questions and how they're answering them, is that really a good indicator of where this couple is and what they need? Can they hold that? Can they keep that? Okay? We interviewed couples who said those things on the evaluations. They had mentors. They went to the conferences. They did everything. They decided to abstain till marriage. They decided to use NFP. They got to the parish, and they were divorced in less than a year and a half. The couples we remember having conversations with, the couples who did everything that we wanted to get them to do. Because when reality set in, the mentor that we had chosen and assigned to them, and the information we had presented to them, and even the decisions they had tried to make, they were not supported in living it out. Okay? So what we're trying to talk about is what can you do to support these couples in living it out? At the parish where we started Witness to Love, couples who had trained and assigned mentors went to 2 days of diocesan prep, 3 meetings with Father, mandatory NFP classes, going over the prepare or the focus. All of that was still a 23% divorce rate at 5 years after the wedding. Church attendance, 10%. That's a lot to require and to have those results. And that was, when we saw that, that's when we hit the reset. And the talk today is really the ideas and the sort of petri dish that went into the discovery of Witness to Love. But right now, we're just going to present to you sort of the underpinnings of what made it work.
So that we ourselves can keep up with what we want to be talking about, we have this acronym, the Art of Evangelization. So the focus of this remaining time together is going to be focusing on attraction, relationship, and trust. I was explaining this earlier. We have all the information. We have all the books, videos, and resources, the Vatican website. We have all the theological content. But what's the famous Catholic scholastic saying, grace builds upon nature? What's been so missing in our experiences has been sort of the nature and the natural indicator, our part, so what we have to give to our fiat, like the incarnation was so required. I heard this saying from our Father Benedict Grishel years ago. When I was in school in Boston. He said this at a retreat. He said, rules without relationships lead to rebellion. And so many young people, millennials today, it's like they see us coming. Here's the podium. I mean, they know at the marriage prep weekend, it's basically going to be 2 days of rules, right? Everything you can't do. That's just how they're wired to think. And obviously, it's very easy on our side of the podium to kind of have a clear, systematic presentation, and at the end of the day, give each other high fives and talk to the 2% couples who are hanging around and feel good. But we know, obviously, when our statistics and our data is the same as the non-church people, when it comes to divorce in the United States, we know we need to try something different.
So the reset that basically occurred was let's look at why did these couples not come to us for help? And so we interviewed the couples who got divorced. We said, why didn't you come for help? Who did you go to? They said, we went to couples who we went to friends that understood what we were going through, friends who would not judge us, people we trusted. Okay, who's that? They said, we went to our friends who'd gone through this. We went to our friends who were divorced. So now I want you to think about it. We're giving them all these resources. We're investing. We're finding mentor couples for them. We're training these couples and assigning them and recruiting them. And we're doing all this work. And they just turn around and go to their divorced friends and ask for, and what does the divorced friend say? You don't deserve this. You deserve better. You deserve to be happy. When you're single, we're going to have some fun together. He's not good enough for you.
I remember this one guy, I was serving his wedding. He was a friend, but so much of our friendship this is years ago, was so built upon almost just sort of a Catholic, it was such a doctrinal friendship in some ways. He had a very much of appreciation of the intellectual wealth of the church, and I'll never forget, he would go to the holy hours and he would read Sister Faustina's journal. It was his favorite book, but he couldn't have a great, he couldn't sustain his relationship with his wife. A wonderful lady, a hardworking nurse. He had so many issues, but he could have worked this out. But there was something that just wasn't, the pieces weren't fitting well. And again, we're proud to be from a city like Lafayette. This is a great place to live. But we know the same thing, too. We have in our own challenges that are indicative of what's happening nationally.
So what we found was that the couple, they really needed someone who they already trusted. You can't create trust out of thin air. You can't create a friendship out of thin air. You can't create relationships out of thin air. And so what we found was there was something that kept coming to us. Two things. One, who do they already trust and admire? And two, how can we get church attendance up? So we wanted to lower the divorce rate by sort of helping them connect with someone they admired and trusted already, because we knew you're going to go to your divorced friends, so let's fill in that hole right now, make that part of marriage prep. And how can we get you to go to church? And we read a paragraph from the First Synod on the Family. It's in Familiaris Consortio. It's our favorite quote from that document. It says that it's paragraph 66 in Familiaris Consortio, and the first half of that paragraph, we did it. It said that marriage prep should have, we should figure out the content, how much, when, the different aspects, figure all that out and structure it. So great. That we've done. I can say that probably 80% of dioceses in the United States have awesome marriage prep. And the rest of us are still working on it, but we're working on it. We all know what needs to be done. That's not a secret. But the other half of that paragraph is that marriage prep should be structured in such a way that those preparing for marriage will not only receive an intellectual training, but will also feel a desire to enter actively into ecclesial community, i.e., go to church, want to go to church. Marriage preparation should make you want to go to church. Okay, that is the second half of the key paragraph from Familiaris Consortio. And I want you to think about, just in your parish or in your diocese, does our marriage formation or preparation process make couples desire, want to go to church? Okay, that's half of what marriage prep should be. But that's a part we just really haven't looked at. If we did that 30 years ago, we wouldn't have had a second synod on the family. The second synod on the family, other than focusing on divorce, it was focusing on why do people not go to church and how can we reach them if they're married and they don't go to church? You can't. If they're married and they don't go to church, they're kind of just out of your range of being able to touch them, okay? That's a huge problem. That's why it's hard to get people to come to marriage enrichment, because we're not connected to the people we need to come.
Think about your own personal story. I think about mine when you were in discernment, your spouse, your vocation. I remember years ago when I was discerning, I met this before I met Mary Rose, but I met a family. I came from a background. I don't have a relative in here. That's good. Not that I know of. I came from a background where I knew there were some things that were missing, and that affected decisions I made as a teenager and when I was in college or so. But later on, when I was early 20s, I met a great family that sort of took me in. And it was a place I would go to when I was out of school. And as a family that loved me, it was a marriage that I looked up to, and as children, there was something in me that was so attracted to that and drawn to that. And that was now, my parents, people do the best they can, right? But I came from a background which is sort of an old way of thinking that probably doesn't work so well today. Sort of live and let live, right? Today is not a great day for probably live and let live. We probably need to be clear, and so get people what they need to know. But as Witness to Love is growing, as we've evolved, I'll give an example. This past week, we had the honor to spend time with Mother Agnes of the Sisters of Life of New York. And we love them, and I love what they do. They open up their homes to unwed moms, and they share their life with them, and they provide the healing and the formation they need, and they're supporting them, before the baby's born, after the baby's born, and on. We had the immense blessing and Archbishop Amon in New Orleans had asked us 2 years ago to ask Mother to be a board member of ours, and I thought, that's impossible.
I said, no way.
There's no way.
She'll never say yes.
So she asked to come to the talk we were given there in Napa, and at the end of the talk, we were just really connecting, and we followed up later and asked if she considered to be a board member, and she said yes, which is amazing. We were in shock. But what I understand is that as the Sisters for Life are providing such healing of the culture in that particular way by just their generosity, at the same time, we're seeing the secret ingredient. If you want to know why Louisiana food is so good, it's not just rinsing everything off under the kitchen sink. It's what you put into the pots. And one of the pieces that was so missing was this relationship and people opening up their home. In the past, marriage prep was such like a burnout party. I mean, it was always like you want to send out invitations at the end of the year to your burnout party because you did much work volunteering. Our experience, though, in this process of creating generosity at another level has spread to us internally and as sort of fire and made things a lot more exciting and enjoyable.
So one of the things we did to kind of put the fire out for our burnout party was to get other people involved in this. So we didn't have to recruit and train mentors. We would say to the engaged couple, choose someone whose marriage you admire, someone who's going to challenge you and inspire you. They should have been married 5 years or more, because the divorce rate peaks around there, and they have to be active in the church, and not an immediate family member. They can't take sides. Bring that couple to us, and we will coach them, inform them to walk with you before and after the wedding. We did that with our first couple that came forward. We said, we're not going to tell them they're the guinea pig, and they didn't know. But the transformation was incredible. The mentor couple they chose was on birth control, and through the process decided to get off. The engaged couple was sexually active, decided to abstain. They also decided to use NFP. We started to see this change. We had them go to church together, go on a double date together, talk about what a virtuous friendship and relationship looked like. The engaged couple had a front row seat to the mentor couple's marriage. The mentor had positive pressure on them. Oh my goodness, I'm not a professional. My marriage is not perfect. I've got to do better at this. I want to get this right for this couple. Their marriage was transformed. They were on fire. They wanted to get involved in the parish and do more. We saw the church go from half full to standing room only. We saw couples, imagine 15, 20 weddings a year. Imagine how many new couples whose lives are transformed and on fire. The mentor couple, we never really thought of them as the target audience. They were just making our lives easier. But in the end, they were so set on fire because of what this did for their marriage and their transformation. And the engaged couple had a front row seat to the couple who they had put on a pedestal having a transformation. We read a lot of the surveys that come in from our couples, and the engaged couples say, we were shocked to find out that the mentor couple we chose was nothing like what we thought they were in their marriage. We were surprised to see the struggles they had, the grittiness of their marriage, the earthiness and the reality of their relationship, and we love them so much more because of it. And we have so much more hope for our own relationship. I mean, we see this over and over and over again. This is a common thread. The couple we put on a pedestal, the idea of marriage that was up on a pedestal that we got out of, videos and romance novels is nothing like the beautiful reality of the grittiness of the sacrament and the incarnational aspect of it.
And nor were we right when we maybe are starting off in our marriage, at least for me, I thought marriage was more like, would look like one of these great couples in a stained glass window or something from the Baltimore Catechism. No offense to the Baltimore Catechism, it's a great book, I use it. But my point is, when you, even coming from a 2% crowd, you can have a thought about what marriage should look like, and it's not necessarily like that. The church bells in the domestic church sound very different than the ones at our parish down the road. They ring at different times, and they're not as pleasant to hear. And when we were bringing in these mentors, I was just sort of this nature and this grittiness of marriage. One of the things that was a big issue for us when we seen things change was always the big question, right? What happens though, right? The big question that we always get is, what happens when you bring into the marriage formation process a couple that's not perfect, right? That has an issue.
Perfect?
And guess what issue is always the big issue? It's not papal infallibility. It's not transubstantiation. It's not. What do you think it is? Contraception. It's always the big issue. What if this mentor couple that again is not a theologian or an expert, what if they're not on board yet? What if they're not converted? And we talked with a lot of people, and I never forget, we were in another state, and there was someone...
Maryland? Baltimore?
Michigan. And we were in Michigan, and we were at a presentation, and this guy said, I love everything you say, and he said, but I just cannot trust that we could bring in someone to the mix, this mentor couple, that could be using contraception or has passed that time in their life. Because I understood that because I came from a 2% background where I thought that it's sort of bad Catholic, good Catholic. Contraception is the litmus test. If you're using the pill or whatever your preferred method is, that you don't necessarily have a role, and that, but obviously we know that it's just so wrong. I mean, when it was Jesus Christ in that warm part of the day that went out and met the woman at the well. It wasn't the Pharisee or Sadducee. There's nothing wrong with church people. but it wasn't the that wasn't the time. And nor, as Bishop Barron said, that the conversation began with the pelvic issues, right? And when I really believe, though, initially our experience was, before we moved along, that everyone was waiting for her to see, how is that conversation going to come up? Right?
And one of the feedbacks we've had on that is that this is a conversation in the church for so long that we've never even allowed to happen. Father Michael Delcom, who helped us start Wednesday Love, he said the challenge isn't when the mentor couple asks all the questions the engaged couple wouldn't ask, because the engaged couple is afraid of losing the church, right? So the mentor asks questions the engaged couple would never ask. And the challenge is when we don't allow these conversations to occur. That's the tragedy. When we don't open up the church to addressing these couples, inviting these couples. And we've been working with Dr. Janet Smith on this, and she said it's the positive pressure and the positive light that you put on that mentor couple that breaks them open to the reality of the church's teaching, because they want to get this right. It's only about 5% of couples who meet that category of married 5 years or more, active in a church, and has a marriage engaged couple admires. So just to keep that in mind, looking at the attraction, what are the engaged couples attracted to? God uses sort of what we are attracted to help us grow closer to Him. That helps us to really understand and accept the truth. So if somebody is trying to present something to us, if we are not attracted to what the person is offering, or just to the person in general, we're not ready to receive what they have.
When we were getting started with Witness to Love, one of the first dioceses we began to work with was the Archdiocese of New York. And while there, we came across this quote from Cardinal Dolan, and he said, when it comes to learning anything, he said, there's only so much you can learn from the blackboard, like swimming lessons, right? You can only learn about how to swim so much outside of the pool, but it's not until you really get in the pool that you learn how to swim. He said, like baseball, he said, when you want to teach, and I've been coaching baseball for my son for a while, coach, pitch, and t-ball, and that's a lot of fun. But, if I started teaching baseball by making them sit down and memorize all the rules for baseball, I mean, he would probably never want to get out. But what did I do? Well, we get a uniform. We smell popcorn, we bake things, we go there, we hang out, get just other friends, and then they learn the rules along the way. But the point with the attraction, like Cardinal Dolan was mentioning, is that we invited people in, and they got to know us at sort of that normal human level.
We can't take the engaged couple and change what they're attracted to. So for example, if the engaged couple's parents were maybe verbally abusive towards each other and then got divorced, okay? That individual, that couple, they have a desire, an attraction to gentleness and kindness, okay? That they're actively looking for that in their lives for healing, okay? But they can't just get that from a podium. That's not going to change their lives. We have an engaged couple right now that chose us, that we're working with, that we're mentoring. We must have been visiting with them for 3 hours. This was some intense stuff that we're going through. And we realized none of the stuff they were dealing with was ever covered in any conference that we did. You can't customize things like that. These are conversations. And we've had this conversation with them before the wedding. They know us, they trust us. Ryan's known the girl since she was 3. They are so open with us. And after the wedding, they're gonna have challenges. They absolutely will. And we're gonna be there for them. Okay, we know what they know, and we all know what the problems are gonna be. We've talked about them. We're here for them. That's very different than going to someone you don't know. So they were attracted to what they saw in our relationship, kind of, that we were balanced and that we were sort of equally yoked and that we were trying to be kind to each other. They were looking for that, even though we don't get it right all the time. So that attraction. If you're not attracted to what someone has, someone cannot give you what they have, okay? Relationships, same thing. If we don't have a relationship, you can't grow in virtue. I can teach you about finances. I can teach you about conflict resolution, the sacraments. I can teach you about all those topics. But if we don't have a relationship, it doesn't mean you're going to buy what we say, okay? It's not two-way. And virtue, now think about it. We teach conflict resolution. We teach all these things. But what if the person has an anger problem? That's a habit. That's a habitual problem that they're working on. And what's going to overcome anger? growing in virtue, in patience, in temperance, okay? That's what's going to overcome it. So they need someone to model that for them. And only someone who that they are attracted to, who possesses that virtue. Virtue is caught, not taught. And that's something we learned the hard way. We used to teach virtue from behind a podium. It didn't change the divorce rate. You can't do that. It doesn't work like that. Someone has to be there to model it for you, to pick you up when you fall, to push you on. And we've learned that there is a night and day difference between talking about prudence from behind a podium and working with a couple who has an anger issue, okay?
So that's the attraction point. And the relationships point is essential. And we've talked a good bit about that. But I just want to highlight the intentional way we focus on this. When we started seeing the divorce trend and the marriage trend go in the direction that we wanted to, and also the parish involvement in the parishes we were working with initially. Yeah.
So, and just in case we forget to say, because we always do, so the divorce rate in the parish that we initially piloted this in, over a 5-year period, we got the divorce rate of all new marriages who went through this witness to love process, we got it down to 0%. We got church attendance from, oh, this is God, but people ask, where did you get this crazy idea? Desperation and the Holy Spirit. That's a really good combination. And I think that's where our church is today, desperation and the Holy Spirit. We never would have tried this harebrained idea otherwise. But it worked. We got church attendance up from 10% to 70% and eventually 90% among newlyweds. And all the parishes that are using it are on track for a very similar statistic. So the increased church attendance increases your chances of marital success. Having friends who are married increases your chance of marital success. Being in a supportive community increases your chance of marital success. Using NFP, all these things. So it's not rocket science. We just had to get the people to the point where they would ask for help, be supported, be in community, and be going to church. That's all we had to do.
One of our board members who helped us to put this piece together is Dr. Peter Martin. I went to school with him at the Institute for the Psychological Sciences, and he works in Nebraska in social services there. But we applied attachment theory, and I'm sure everybody in this room pretty much understands, are familiar with attachment theory, just how babies grow with relationship with their moms and trust, and it kind of helps them sustain appropriate, healthy relationships. Now, we know that people have a lot of anxiety about the church, whether it's said or not said, and whatever it is. Sometimes I'm having a bad day, I think it's laziness. Other time, I'm not having a bad day, and I'm a little bit more receptive, maybe understanding where they are. But there are people who are ambivalent, anxious, whatever it is about the church. And so we know, right? Experts, 2%, standing at the podium, not necessarily a great starting point. But when we started putting in this relationship and allowed them to grow with someone together, I really feel that God had in mind for us today with our kids, that as we're growing in our marriage, almost 10 years, that our children are growing. Well, we're physically growing, right? I'm not as energetic as it used to be, but we're learning together. And we're growing closer to the Lord together. And we should be, right? We go to confession, we pray together, we duke it out verbally when we need to. Probably there's a lot of yelling.
We're both choleric.
But my point is that when you're growing with someone, the growing is much more substantial and it sticks. Mm-hmm. And if you're from cultures that liked round tables and people looking at each other and being together and eating a lot, you would get this, We're working with a group of Vietnamese Catholic leaders right now, and they're so focused because they want to translate Witness to Love, and they're so focused on having engaged couples. They do weekend retreats in their homes, and they live in neighborhoods sort of by themselves or near themselves. The guys stay in one house, the girls stay in another house, and they spend the weekend together, and they just love on them. But and it's the relationship again. Mm-hmm. That's like the catechesis comes down. I was in school in Boston. During the time when the scandal, right, erupted. And I saw firsthand just the erosion of trust, which was the last part. But I learned some interesting things from some of the bad, some of the evil examples that we saw. There was influencers from outside of the church, sort of trying to shape some of these priests in this sense. It is my understanding. I don't work for the FBI or criminal background or something like that. But my understanding was they were telling these, some priests and some leaders to, get out of the rectories, get out of the church ground, take off the clerics, go into the streets, just hang out with people, and you can read all, but there was a lot of bad problems, but it can't be just, right, this relationship that's just sort of a free-for-all. It's very directed, and we focus intentionally on the moral virtues. People think, oh, it's so boring, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. We don't think so. We might not use those terms too much, but it is the foundation because nature has to go in the direction of God, right? It can't go in the direction of ourselves.
And this trust aspect is really kind of the door to evangelization. If anyone here was in Orlando at the Catholic Leaders Convocation last summer, they spent like 45 minutes drawing out what is the number one challenge to evangelization in the church today among any age group. Trust. People don't trust the church, institutions, or authority. They trust Google and Siri, just like Ryan said. But trust is the door to evangelization. You don't trust somebody you don't know. So you have to have a relationship with them. And you don't have relationships with people that you don't want to spend time with, that you're not attracted to, okay? So we've been kind of trying to create relationships, create trust. These are things that can't be created. These are things that have to be built upon. And just the smallest seed of attraction, and you've seen this in your own friendships, in your own lives, in your own marriages, the smallest seed of attraction can grow into a relationship. And as you grow in relationship, you grow in trust. But nobody trusts someone they just met. But in marriage prep, in marriage formation, it's in classrooms, it's behind desks. We need to open the doors to the domestic church. We need to open the doors to our homes. We have to help these couples, and for us, it's really these mentor couples who go through, who have a transformation. We say to them, your home is the missionary outpost of the local church. Your home is a stepping stone into community. Your home is critical for evangelization. Your home will bring people to the church that would never otherwise go to church. Never.
We were talking about this earlier, and just this past, we love the holidays, and for some reason, Rose and I convinced ourselves it's a good idea to have our extended family. Mary's a great cook, but it's a great idea to have 80 people over for Easter Sunday and barbecue brisket and yeah,
that was a big brisket.
It was a big, and it was great. And I was saying earlier to some good friends here, probably 70% of those extended family of mine didn't go to Mass. They're all baptized.
On Easter Sunday.
They have no significant reason not to go to church at all, besides, when I'm tired, I say laziness or indifference or I don't know. But they came over and the table was awesome. We had a big picnic table outside, a lot of food, a lot of good cold things to drink, and but no one could touch the food until they sang. I made them all sing, some Easter hymns, and they didn't do it well the first time, so I made them do it again. And I said, we got to get to this food while it's hot, and they loved it. They loved it. Everybody had a good time. Nobody left. We didn't have any screen on.
There was no scrap of food left.
I turned the Wi-Fi off. So nobody could just do this stuff. But it was amazing. We were in Ottawa, and I'll give you a good example and our time is ending here, or at least at the podium. And we were when we were in Quebec, I love the stories of the Jesuit missionaries. If just the missionary thrust of the church. My gosh, talk about uncomfortable to go across the ocean. My family's from Quebec. And while we were there, though, we learned this amazing story about, you're familiar with St. Kateri Tekakwitha. You say you pronounce it, right? And there's John Paul II had gone in the 80s to Ottawa and had celebrated this kind of event in Mass in Canada, they were referred to as the First Nations, we'd say maybe more Native Americans, we would say that here. And he was referring to a couple, and you should learn about them, and I won't pronounce their last names. But it was Joseph and Marie. Joseph and Marie were a married couple, and they were the first converts to Catholicism in the same community that Kateri Tekakwitha lived in. And there's a beautiful homily that you can find, the homily. But it talks about what they did, and that married couple, and how they spurned so many conversions because of what we're saying here. They became sort of a family missionary disciples. They became family missionary disciples in, New France at the time and North America, and it spread.
And we are really, truly at a time in the church today where couples and families need to understand this, that their home is the missionary outpost of the local church, that they are family missionary disciples. And you don't have to get in the car for 44 days and go all over the place. You don't even have to, cook the brisket. All you have to do is open up your home and invite couples in, have a Bible study, just have a meal, say grace, invite father over so people can meet a priest. Just basic stuff. But if we don't do this, the church will be empty. And there's fewer and people going to church. People don't trust the church. We're not as welcoming as we could be. People aren't attracted to the church. There is definitely a different range all over the country of church communities that are welcoming. We visit a lot of parishes as guests. Sometimes we go in, no one says hi. You can go in and out unnoticed with 4 kids. It's amazing. But there's other parishes where people want to visit, talk, invite us in. We go in the rectory, we have a drink. There's parishes where we visit and connect with the families. There's parishes that there is an invitation to community, and we have to say, sorry, we live 1,000 miles away, but y'all are an awesome parish, and thank you, and we'll be back. But we have to be a welcoming church where people are attracted, we have relationships with them, and they trust us. Those grim statistics are going to be there. It's going to happen. So just like on one side note, there is a talk we normally sort of include, or a story. A lot of you have heard it, so I'm not going to give the whole story, but there was a civilly married couple that we worked with that was kind of like, I would say, the bottom of the barrel in our expectation for working with them. We were at the point where we were jaded. We didn't like the couples we worked with. We were a little bit frustrated with the lack of results. But this couple...
Also tired. You ever get
very
tired?
tired.
You have like a bunch of children like under, 5 years old, and, it's like only so much you can do sometimes.
But this couple, they chose us to be their mentors. The husband had been in jail. The wife had a learning disability. They were not a couple that we would have been attracted to working with. In fact, we kind of told them no the first time, but they were persistent. And Father Michael said, hey, you guys cooked this up. You think it's awesome. You should do it. Do it with this couple. And God sent us a doozy of a first couple. I didn't even know what the husband had been in jail for. And they came into our living room, and we visited with them and talked to them. And he smelled like septic tank, and she smelled like French fries. She had just got off work. We were so opposed to like being snookered into this. We just didn't want to do it. But the husband sat down on our sofa and said that while he was in prison, he joined a Bible study and got to know Jesus. And spent the next 30 minutes witnessing to us, who thought we were going to be witnessing to him, how God had worked in his life and brought him to this point. We went to their wedding. Ryan was the best man, and I was the maid of honor in their wedding. And their 3 kids that they had from different relationships came, and they had been civilly married. And they now lead RCIA at the parish. They go to Bible study every Monday night. Their family members are being transformed. Their family members had like cocaine addictions, and they're coming to church. And the husband's mother sat on our front porch less than a year ago and said, I wanted to say thank you for inviting me to go to church with you. I didn't invite her, but she came. And she said, I wanted to say thank you because when my son came to pick me up every Sunday to go to church with you, that I had to be clean for church, and I couldn't be high. And I thought if I could do it on Sunday, I can do it on Monday. And she's finally clean after over 20 years of drug addiction, just because her son wanted to pick her up to go to Mass because he wanted her to have community with us. This isn't somebody I wanted to hang out with. It wasn't somebody I even knew I had touched their lives. I didn't even like them. But we were going through this process of, okay, we're going to open up our home, we're going to listen, we're going to go to church with you. And they changed us. We didn't change them so much. So a caveat to all of this is, when you really do this right, when you open up your home and your heart, and you're willing to work with these couples and meet them where they are and walk with them. Accompany, the word has all kinds of ambiguous meanings, but accompany means meeting somewhere where they are and walking with them. But sometimes they're walking with you, okay? And you didn't know that was going to happen. It happens all over the Bible. We shouldn't have been surprised. That's how God works. And that's what we found has transformed our marriage, our ministry, and the way that we see this. And we hope that this talk has been helpful. for you and kind of opening your eyes to the beauty and the more and the reality of what can be done and what can change in the church and how you can be a part of that. Thank you for listening after lunch.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of the sacrament of matrimony. We thank you for the gift of our vocations. We know that Jesus in you, all things can become new. And we just pray that whatever healing in our lives, in particular whatever gaps we may have created in our own marriages, in the lives of our own children, through any gaps that we created through our own selfishness or neglect or pride or anger, just whatever it is, that any of these gaps would be filled with God's grace, particularly with the graces of the Holy Family, because I know I can't be a perfect dad and a perfect husband. Only God can be totally, perfectly faithful and fruitful and loving and committed. But it just, for those gaps, I just pray that the Holy Family would enter in our own hearts and lives so that we can be complete and whole couples and people and families for you and for your service in the world. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Someone who's used media a lot in evangelization, so I believe in the importance of Catholic radio, Catholic TV, Catholics using the new media. Can I encourage everyone to watch Shalom TV? I think it's a great vehicle of evangelization. And God bless all of you.